Today, I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know about how to care for your Zamiococcus zamiifolia, AKA the ZZ plant. It just so happens to be one of my favorite plants because, well, it's low maintenance. It's easy, breezy, ZZ. Native to East Africa, the ZZ plant isn't just loved because of its beautiful foliage. It's loved because it's low maintenance, easy to care for, and can tolerate low amounts of light. So if you're someone who maybe lives in a shadier apartment or home, you can bring these plants in to make your space come alive, be more green. And those of us who probably don't have a lot of time to put in the effort of plant care, it's a beautiful plant to have in your home as well. If I was to put together a starter kit for beginners, the ZZ plant would definitely be at the top of my list. So today we're gonna cover how to identify a ZZ and how to select one to bring home with you, how to pick the right soil, the right planter, also how to fertilize that plant as well. We're gonna cover when and how to water your plant, finding the best light for your plant, and some special care and maintenance so that your ZZ plant can thrive. When you're in that shop, you wanna make sure that you are picking the right plant for you. The best way to go about that is trying to find a healthy plant. First of all, something that is showing signs of new life, showing that it has the potential to continue growing in your home. Usually, you can find them anywhere between maybe a foot to about 3 feet in the store, but in your home, they're not gonna grow that large because they are slow growers. And when we're looking for them, they grow mainly upwards, at least they should. So when you're selecting one, you wouldn't want to select one that already has its stems lowered and falling out of the pot. That is a sign that it requires more attention and more care. Something that is growing upright and has thick, healthy stems and nice, shiny, almost emerald green, that almost darker green look to the foliage, that is also key. Another thing you want to look for is a nice, proper, solid bulb on your ZZ, which grow at the top of the soil. You also want to make sure that you are focusing on limiting bringing home pests. So here you want to make sure you are checking below leaves, above leaves, and again, around the stems and above the soil. So now that you have your new ZZ, let's talk about finding the right planter for it and the proper soil mixture to make sure that it can thrive. So different types of pots have different benefits. When we're talking about those materials, we're talking about whether or not you're gonna place your plant in a terracotta pot or you're gonna place your plant maybe in a ceramic glaze pot. Now, when it comes to the ZZ plant, the best type of vessel for it will be one that is more breathable, one that will allow for that moisture to be pulled away from that plant, like a terracotta, clay, or ceramic pot, kind of like this one here. The next thing is to make sure we have the right soil mixture. For a plant like the ZZ that is used to having drier soil, you want something that is more aerated and well drained, something that can pull or strip moisture away better. So I have a organic potting mix here, and my ratio for a ZZ plant would probably be about 70% soil, 20% perlite, and perlite helps to pull moisture away. These little white specks, once added to your soil, will strip moisture away from that soil. So we're gonna add 20% perlite in here, and then 10% sand. And that sand can also help to then strip that moisture away. And then you stir all of that goodness up. It's kind of like baking a cake, but probably something that you don't wanna eat. And as you can see it here, it has a more drier consistency. So when you water your ZZ plant, it's not gonna take long for that moisture to be evaporated, to be pulled away from your roots so that your plant can be healthy and thrive in its pot. So if you're looking for a more detailed guide on how to repot your plants, please check out my chapter on repotting plants. Once you bring a new plant into your home, that plant is coming in very well fertilized. All of that soil is rich with nutrients. But over that year, after you water it and wash all of the nutrients out of that soil, that is when you're gonna have to start fertilizing it. And the best time to do so is during spring and summer. Now we're talking about fertilizers, there's different types out there. There's liquid fertilizer, There's capsules that you can use as well. You can also decide to freshen up your plant by just adding fresh soil, nutrient-rich fresh soil. So I would encourage you to go to your local plant shop and talk to an associate there on what fertilizer is best for your plant. Now that we covered how to pot and fertilize your ZZ plant, let's talk about regular care, starting with watering. The ZZ plant is tough and low maintenance, but it is prone to being overwatered, so you have to be very careful there. If you allow your soil to stay too damp, it can create root rot and kill that ZZ plant right away. All of those sturdy, tough, thick stems will become mush and all of your foliage will faint. You'll start to see it turn yellow, and that isn't what you'll want. So you want to make sure that during the warmer months, spring through summer, that you're watering it when it is completely dry. And that's probably gonna be every 2 to 3 weeks. Come fall, come winter, it probably is gonna be every 4 to 6 weeks. So you get a little break. So that's why it's also cool to have a ZZ plant in your home. Who wants to be watering plants every single day, every single week, right? So when it comes to having that ZZ plant, when you're ready to water it, you're just gonna make sure that it is dry. And after 2, 3 weeks, more than likely it definitely will be. Now, when we're about to water that ZZ, we wanna make sure that we are using lukewarm water, not cold, not hot. Hot and cold water can shock your roots and kill that plant. And when you're watering your ZZ, what you're gonna do is, just like all of your plants, you wanna do it slow and steady. You wanna make sure all of the roots in that soil get a bit of time to pull that moisture in. And what's important here is to make sure that you water it until you see moisture make its way out of the drainage holes into your base tray. So right now, I'm not sure if I gave it enough water, but I wanna wait because I don't wanna just fill up my base tray with water because I don't want it to overflow and start to pour onto my floor or onto the surface of my table. So as I wait, I can now see as water starts to trickle out of the bottom of that pot into my base tray, knowing at this very moment I fully have watered the entire pot so that every single root in there has moisture. I'll let it sit for another 15, maybe 30 minutes. Maybe it can pull a bit of that moisture back in, but if not, I might decide to then take my plant off, dispose of that runoff water, and then put my plant back on the base tray and let it live its wonderful life. Now, we're talking about overwatered signs. That'll be yellowing leaves, as you can see here. The leaf will just turn fully yellow. And once that starts to take shape, that leaf isn't gonna turn green ever again. It's just gonna fall off of that plant. So in the case of a ZZ plant, you definitely wanna lean more towards underwatering than overwatering. But a sign that you possibly have given that plant not enough moisture is when you start to see burnt, crispy foliage, as you can see here at the edges of that plant. And you can handle that by watering that plant. Now let's talk about the most important thing your ZZ plant needs on a daily basis, light. So when it comes to light, it is everything to every single plant. And making sure you have the right type of light for your plant is important. When it comes to the ZZ plant, that plant, well, like all plants, loves bright amounts of exposure, but it can also tolerate lower amounts of light. So here in my home, I actually have this ZZ plant about 6 to 8 feet away from the nearest window, but it is still growing and thriving where it is. Because it's so far away from a window, I wanna make sure that I'm giving it as much exposure as possible. So when it comes to routine maintenance, wiping away any sort of, let's say, dust or grime on the foliage can bring an extra bit of exposure to the tissue of those leaves. But it can also give your plant back its natural shine. And while you're in here, taking a look, wiping down leaves, I'll also take the time to rotate my plant at least every few weeks just to make sure every single part of it, especially in this little cubby, are getting as much light as they possibly can. So rotation, wiping foliage down, two important things when it comes to daily or weekly maintenance. While the ZZ plant should grow mainly upright, it can fall out of the pot a bit and take up a lot of real estate. But if you're someone that doesn't truly love that look, you could take a stake here, as so, press it down into your soil, and take that foliage that is pushing its way outside of that pot and lift it up. Keep it upright, grab yourself some invisible string or gardening Velcro and wrap it around that stake in your foliage. So now everything is now upright and not taking up all that room as it was previously. Or you could use your shears to prune back that plant. Now, pruning can be two-sided. You can prune just to get rid of foliage, or you could prune, let's say, here, this one that's hanging out. Let's say we wanted to prune it and cut it to propagate the ZZ plant. And in this case, we are taking a cutting that's called tip cut propagation. Now, who would I be if I didn't already prepare the situation? I have a ZZ stem that was already cut, and as you can see from the base of that cut, roots developing. And what's also cool to notice here is that you'll notice at the base of those roots, those bulbs that also develop at the base of your pot where your stems touch the soil. Once you see those developing at the base of your ZZ cutting, that's when you know to then place it into soil. So if you're looking for a more detailed guide on how to propagate your plants, please check out our chapter on propagation. So we've just learned how to identify ZZ and selecting a really healthy one to bring home with you. We've also learned how to maintain and care for them so that they can grow and thrive in our home. Now that you have this knowledge, you are now empowered to give all of your plants, especially your ZZ, the best life possible.